And so I wanted to share with you a couple of tips and tricks on how you can overcome this challenge and how you can document your processes.
I love bookkeeping.
Hey, it's Ben Robinson, and today we're going to talk about documenting and improving on your processes. This is one of the most commonly asked questions that I get is that, how do I document my processes? I feel like I'm all over the place. Well, guess what? I was in your position too. And so I wanted to share with you a couple of tips and tricks on how you can overcome this challenge and how you can document your processes pretty darn quick. So here's what we do. Okay. We need to distinguish that there's process documentation, and then there's a separate activity. There's process improvement. So let's first break this down and talk about the documentation of your processes. So whether or not you have your processes written down, whether you have checklists, it doesn't matter. You have a process. Okay. It might not be the most efficient one, and that's fine. We will fix that. But really what we want to do is to document how we do things. Now, why do we want to do this? Well, the reason that we want to is that we want to be able to get more done in less time. That's one of the reasons. The second thing that we want to do is that we want to be able to deliver an awesome service to our clients. We want to make sure that we are being efficient so that we can use the time that we gain with all of these processes and the efficiencies to do other things, right? Maybe that's offering other advisory services to them, as we've discussed. Maybe it's going to the lake. I don't care what it is, but it's a benefit for you. It's a benefit for your client to have these processes in place. Now, if it's just you, it's still important that you document and you improve upon your processes. If you have people working for you, team members, then it's even more important that we have this. Because as you probably have experienced when you have other people working for you, maybe the work doesn't get done like you want it to. Well, I always look to myself as being the problem because it's usually me. And I experience that same thing. I'm like, well, dang, Ben, have you told them how to do that? Well, yeah, I told them once, and then they trained somebody. So we're going to get rid of all of that. So the very first thing that we're going to do is that we are going to list out all of the processes that we have. Now, here's what I mean by that, the meta processes. So a monthly deliverable. Okay. So your monthly deliverable are to present the 3 financial statements to your client. Okay. So there is a process for you to do that. All right. That includes gathering the information, getting the bank feeds, classifying, reconciling, journal entries, all the different things that you do. But the big process there is the outcome, right? The outcome is the deliverable as your engagement letter states. And that's going to be the 3 financial statements. So what we can do, though, is to take that process and to break it down into task bunch or whatever you want to call them. I just kind of bunching of tasks. I don't have good names for things, but I kind of say, all right, if it's about data, it's about getting data, classifying data, there is a process for that. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to list out the meta processes that we have, probably have 3 or 4 that are critical. And then we take those and we break them down further into the different roles that we can play in there. So what I want you to do is I want you to take one of those, okay, take one of those subtasks or tasks, and I want you to do it. And when I mean do it, so let's say that you are, let's say you're classifying transactions. Okay. You're bringing them from a bank feed. You're manually entering them. Hopefully not. You're uploading a spreadsheet, whatever the case may be. But before you do that, I want you to get yourself some screen capture software. Now, I personally use Snagit. It's mine. It's pretty simple. It's about $50, I think, a year for Snagit. But this is something you've all seen those. We do them here also, where it's screen capture, right? Where you're recording and you're speaking into your computer, your technology device, what you're actually doing. And you can show. So it comes out when you get done with that recording. It's what's called an MP4. I don't want to get too technical on this, but it has a video file and it has an audio file. And that's very important. So let's say that I was going through that process where I was categorizing, bringing in the transactions. Now I have my screen capture software. I want to fire it up. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to start the recording, and then I want to do the activity. I'm going to do the process. So I'm going through and I'm doing it. So what's happening there? The screen capture software is gathering all this information. And I'm also speaking what I am doing. I'm walking somebody through. And the perspective that you should take is that, let's say you have a 16-year-old, or pretend that you borrow one from somebody else. That's a better thing to do. A 16-year-old should be able to come in, watch your video, and be able to do exactly what you're doing. Okay? That's the premise that we want to come from. So when we're doing this, When we're actually doing the process, we want to give away too much information rather than not enough. Now, we'll come back to that here in just a second. But what we're doing is we're getting the process done, and we're also documenting it. We're doing it. Somebody could see me on screen, and somebody could hear my voice walking them through that. And that's all that you have to do. And when you get done with that process, you hit stop, right? And now you have a file, and it's on your computer. And here's the next thing that I want you to do. I want you to get that audio transcribed. Okay, now this is going to be the basis for your process. Okay, now you can get that transcribed from rev.com. That's who we use. It's about $1 a minute. I think it's exactly $1 a minute. So if that process takes you 12 minutes, then Higher Math says that's $12, right? But it's the best $12 that you probably will ever spend when it comes to processes. So the reason that we want to get that narrative is that this is, again, they're going to give you back rev.com, or you can do it yourself if you want. I wouldn't recommend it. You can get somebody on Upwork to do it. Doesn't matter. I recommend rev.com just because they're so reliable. But you get a file back. You get a Word document and a PDF document. That Word document is going to be the basis of your process. So what you would want to do when you get that information back from rev.com or from your transcriptionist is that you'd want to clean it up. You want to clean up the ums. Maybe you said something a couple of times. You want to get it down to where it's just the highlights, the things that actually need to be done. Okay, so let's pause right there and talk about what we have so far. I have a video with audio that shows me doing the process. Wonderful. Now, I also have a Word document, something that I can read that shows me how to do that. Okay, so those are two great things, but we're going to add one more layer to this. And then what we're going to do is put a checklist. Okay. So now let's imagine that we're bringing somebody on and I say, hey, I want you to classify transactions. Here's the process. Watch this video, read this process, and now follow the checklist. Now the checklist has to pass what I call the Cessna 172 checklist. And that basically means that it's a half sheet of paper. It's no more than about 5 points, 5 things that need to be done. If the checklist is more than that, then we probably need to break that process up. Now, the checklist is not like, hey, fire up QuickBooks Online and log in. You've documented that. You've shown that. The checklist is the big things. Did you capture all the transactions? Check, right? I captured all of them, not just getting the bank feeds. That's not capturing all of them. Getting the outstanding checks, getting anything else that my client has done that hasn't been reconciled or hasn't been entered, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So it's very important that we do that. So that item goes on the checklist. A checklist is a very high thing, these things absolutely have to be done in the process. Again, they shouldn't be more than about 5 of those things on a checklist, and it should fit on half a sheet of paper. Very important that we do that. Okay. So what we have just done there is we've documented our processes. Now, how do we improve on those processes? Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to break this one off. We're going to turn it into 2 different pieces of content here because it's a totally different thing to do, a totally different process for improvement. So the first thing that you have to do, though, is to document your processes. So you do it with this one, and then you move on to the next one, and then on to the next one. I recommend that you start with the simpler ones, the ones with fewer steps, the ones that are less complex, and work your way up. So when you're making out all those processes and then you're bunching those tasks, kind of put a complexity level to them, right? 1 through 5, let's say. 1 being pretty darn easy, 5 being pretty darn complicated. And sort it, right? You know how to sort all that through a spreadsheet. And start working on the ones that are simplest, right? So that you start to build up momentum. But I tell you, just by doing this, it's going to open your eyes. You're going to get so much benefit just from documenting it. Now, in the next series, what we're going to talk about is how we go about improving those. So your call to action, what I want you to do right now is that I want you to list out those processes and I want you to document one. It's not going to be perfect. You're not going to be, Academy Award winner or anything like that. If you say ums and all that on the video, it doesn't matter. We're just getting this stuff down. Okay? Well, I appreciate you listening with us. We're going to continue on in another segment with how we go about improving those processes. This is Ben Robinson, and I'll see you next time. Head on over to ilovebookkeeping.com. There, you're going to find all of the shows, the notes, and some other great goodies that we have for you there. Now, if you'd like to be a guest on the I Love Bookkeeping show, there is a link that says Be a Guest. Go in there, and we'll walk you through the process of getting on the show. And finally, to discover more about our programs, go to the courses page on the ilovebookkeeping.com site. There you have it, another great episode of I Love Bookkeeping. Thank you for being a proud listener, and thank you for being a bookkeeping professional. Enjoy the rest of your week.
I love bookkeeping. Here's a little shout to all my friends working hard at keeping the books. You want to change your life, you want to grow